AMG scale models. My name is Dan. I'll be your host for this build. The Chevelle Super Sport represented Chevrolet's entry into the muscle car battle. The Chevelle SS 396 became a series of its own in 1966. SS 396 Sport Coupes and convertibles used the same Malibu Sport Coupe and convertible bodies with reinforced frames. Front suspension was revised with higher rate springs, recalibrated shocks, and a thicker front stabilizer bar, but with different exterior trim. The engines included three 396 cubic inch V8s, the standard rated at 325 horsepower, with optional 360 horsepower and 375 horsepower engines available. This AMT kit, part number AMT 1342/12, is 1/25th scale and contains 105 parts. To start this build, I will wash and dry the parts, then lay them out to start my assembly process. I will start by assembling the 396 cubic inch engine. There are 14 parts in total for this step. The engine parts were primed using Kaleido's gray matte primer. Tamiya X6 orange and X7 red were mixed to replicate the Chevy engine color and applied to the primed engine. Chrome valve covers, intake, carburetor, distributor, fan, drive accessories, and exhaust manifolds were added to the engine block. The chrome air cleaner tops off the engine assembly. To prepare the body for paint, I used sanding sticks to remove mold lines and flash, sanded the body with 1000 grit sandpaper, and deepened the panel lines with an X-Acto knife. Here, I am using my gallery airbrush to apply the Kaleido matte gray primer to the body. I am using about 18 to 20 psi and a .35 millimeter needle. I applied a light first coat, allowing 15 minutes for the first coat to level. I applied a more thorough second coat and let the primer cure for 48 hours to fully dry before moving on to the next step. The primer leveled very nicely. I will wet sand the primer using 2000 and 3000 grit sandpaper to remove any imperfections and give the top coat a better adhesion. I used Kaleido's Cosmic Black Gloss as a top coat. Several coats were applied. Once the paint cured, I wet sanded out imperfections using 3000 to 8000 grit papers in succession. Decals were applied to the front fenders, rear quarter panels, and rear section. I applied several coats of Kaleido gloss varnish. I let that cure for 5 days and then wet sanded any imperfections. Next, I used Meguiar's Ultimate Compound to restore the shine to the finish. I attached the firewall to the chassis, then placed the steering shaft and gearbox, along with the master cylinder. The engine cradle was installed. This also holds the steering knuckles and steering linkage in place. I set the 396 engine into its mounts in the engine cradle. Here's the non-glamorous part of model building, the stuff that nobody ever really features on their videos. Trimming off the excess plastic. Now this is the exhaust off of this car, and I'm trying to scrape the mold lines off. Helps remove them and make them look like actual pipes. So I usually use an X-Acto blade and just rake it along that mold line. Try to get most of it off that way. This is a really intricate piece because of all the bends. Try not to cut your fingers. And try to feather it in some more. See, But now I will take the sanding stick to it, remove as much defect as I can. And after you work the piece, you'll get pretty much rid of all the mold lines. Now we're all prepped for paint. To paint the exhaust pipes and mufflers, I used Kaleido Metal Colors stainless steel straight from the container to create a realistic metallic finish. 2 coats were applied and allowed to dry overnight. The extra prep work paid off. These look exactly like stainless steel pipes. Here are the pipes installed into the chassis. Here are a few helpful tips when installing the rear suspension. I would start by gluing on the springs to the rear axle. When installing the rear axle, you want to make sure this exhaust pipe is not installed yet, because the mounting arms for the rear axle, which fit against the base, will have to go under the exhaust. So you'll widen the holes a tad bit on the chassis itself. You'll apply a little glue, tip this back, so then you can install the drive shaft. And then once you have the drive shaft in place, tip it forward, locking it into the control arm mounts. And then you just push everything down, make it all solid, and then you thread this exhaust pipe under the axle, attach it to the back of the muffler and to this mounting point for the pipe. Last but not least, you'll install your shock absorbers. And here is the completed chassis. I painted the interior pieces a custom tan color. Door cards were detailed with a chrome pennant installed along with the seats. The dash was detailed with the kit decals and installed along with a custom wood grain steering wheel and shifter. I think the completed interior turned out well. The instructions for installing the radiator and fan shroud are a little limited. I would suggest placing the shroud around the engine fan, then placing the radiator to the chassis, then attaching the shroud to the radiator for the best fit. Once that is in place, the upper and lower radiator hoses, along with the battery and coolant overflow, is installed next. Using a combination of bare metal foil and a chrome pen, I did the trim around the windows, wheel wells, and rocker panels. The windshield wipers, and rear window and trim were installed as well. Now I can install the taillights. I assembled the wheels and I added red line tire decals. The front and rear bumpers were attached to the body. I placed the body onto the chassis along with the wheels. Last but not least, the driver's side mirror and door handles were attached to complete the assembly. And with that, my build of AMT's 1966 Chevrolet Chevelle SS is complete.